Teachers are ridiculous. What was the trashiest thing you've seen a parent do? Mum used to be a teacher and this happened to someone she worked with. Child was strangling another child. Teacher wasn't strong enough to pull the child off of the other child. So ended up having to thump the child until he released. Child ended up rather bruised. Parents of the child doing the strangling decided they wanted to try and sue the teacher for hitting their child. Result equals teacher who prevented their son from murdering someone suspended from work until the case gets rejected from court. Mother came to a school sports day swigging from a bottle of wine. We always felt desperately sorry for her daughter. Because whenever she returned to school following a holiday at home, this was a boarding school, we had to wash all her clothes because they reeked of cigarettes. And this poor little girl was easily the most unhappy child I've ever seen. Wreck their car buying drugs on the way to pick their child up from preschool. And then try to get another parent to cover for them with their estranged husband. My mom's a teacher and in order to talk to a parent about a child that was struggling due to the school environment, she arranged to meet at the parent's house. Keep in mind this was scheduled in advance with a set time. The dad answered the door 100% naked and tried to have the meeting with him naked on the front porch. My mom doesn't do anything outside the school anymore. Edit. Staff raised money to get an 8-year-old girl a winter coat. Live in rural Canada. Girl came to school the next day in a t-shirt in the dead of winter. Her mom wearing the brand new child-sized jacket. Edit. For those wondering, the principal confronted her about it and mom told her to duck off and anything her kids owned belonged to her and she could do what she wanted with it. Children's aid was called and that student lives with a very nice foster family now. Edit 2. Mother was rail thin. Looked like the stereotypical junkie archetype. The sleeves were 3 too short. Didn't cover most of her stomach and she could do it up properly. The cafeteria, which is used for parent meetings, has tables with fixed bench seating. You have to swing a leg over to sit down. Parent wore a short skirt and was commando. She also got up several times. Our vice principal is a former army sergeant who's built like a tank. He's well liked and an amazing role model in a community where many of our kids don't have a good male role models. On several occasions I've seen mothers step well over the line and make very S-word comments to him directly in front of their kids. I mean in plain sight of their own children and in ways the kids notice. He's always very respectful and often asks another staff member to join him if he sees one of these parents coming to talk. But it's pretty damn trashy when it comes to some of the innuendo I've overheard. These aren't jokes either. They try to get handsy with him too. My cousin is a teacher and she once had a parent come to a parent-teacher conference extremely drunk and right before the meeting tried to pull out a bag of coke and start doing lines. Police were called and so was CPS. My mum's story. A girl and her parents were being interviewed before starting high school. The primary school this girl went to notified the high school that the girl was autistic. When my mum tried to discuss how they can best cater to the girl's needs, the parents interrupted. The parents sent the kid out of the room. Say to my mum she's not autistic anymore, she grew out of it. The girl is clearly autistic and the school was trying to help. I'm a high school teacher. One time a parent of a child who had been going back and forth with another child on social media came to the school to confront the other girl. The mom ended up bursting into my classroom to try to fight one of my 9th grade girls, sending us into a lockdown until the woman was removed by the police. Edit. I want to make clear that the systems in place have failed this woman, her family, and her friends at basically every level, and I can understand why she felt like she didn't trust any systems to handle the situation. The fact that many comments went straight to talking about race is disappointing. By the end of the school year this particular mother was helping chaperone events and was a good role model for our young people. Her daughter was one of the best performing students in the grade. So although this particular event was traumatizing for a lot of people, let's not use it to justify any kind of racism or generalizations. K thanks. Mum slept with her daughter's adult boyfriend. Kicks daughter out of house. Daughter goes to live with dad. Mom tries to say dad molested daughter. Real piece of work. I called a parent about a behavior issue. I must have been on speakerphone. Because I heard the kid come home. Parent starts screaming at and wailing on the kid. Cussing. Calling them all sorts of names. I don't even know if the parent remembered I was on the phone. I hung up the phone and went to my principal. Teachers are mandated reporters. Don't hit your kids in front of a teacher. This one was pretty funny. A parent brought out a pack of sweets or something and her son asked, "Can I have some?" Full stop. To which the mother responded, "Where's your ducking manners? How about ducking please?" I facepalmed so hard. Oh my god, I've worked in behavior units juvies for a few years. So you can imagine the families we get. My fabs took the kids out on the last day of term. Pulled into the driveway and one of the kids' mothers is standing there. Can of Monster in one hand. Cigarette in the other. And wearing a mini skirt and knee-high boots in the middle of winter. One grandparent used to come in wearing a dirty singlet with his belly hanging out. Tried to kiss me and called me love, darling, and babe. A kid left grounds without permission, so didn't have his phone, etc. Which we confiscate. Mum came to pick it up. And when the principal tried to engage her in a conversation about her son's behavior, she attacked him with her handbag. I have to. There is a parent who would walk through our closed campus every single day. As teachers we are supposed to stop her because it's a closed campus. Every single day she would pretend she didn't know the rules. We always knew it was the same parent because she let her younger children who weren't in school yet ride around on their scooters ahead of her. One day she was walking through with a stroller. She was not paying attention and her freaking baby started falling out of the front of the stroller. I saw 4 teachers jump up to help the kid and the mom didn't even acknowledge. The other one happened directly to me during parent-teacher conferences. I was meeting with a mom and her live-in boyfriend about her son. At the end of the conference I asked if they had any questions I could answer for them and he started asking me personal questions and flirting with me. I deflected and told them I had more conferences. But other teachers have told me that parents have hit on them before, so it's probably pretty common. Not a teacher but a college administrator. Parents will call in very frequently when there is an issue with their student's living situation. If they're an asshole, frequent, I quote FERPA to them. Best example, I had to bill a student for around $600 in damages to their room at the end of the year. Mum called me pissed off about this because they had tried to repair the damages, poorly. She ended up yelling about this over the phone. And I reminded her that her son was 22 years old and that I could only talk with him about this. Kid calls me back the next day and apologizes for his mom being a bitch to me and asks if I'm able to just bullshit his mom when she calls back. It's a weird line of work. Edit. This got big. Some vocabulary I've learned for other folks dealing with this. Snauplo parents. Not a teacher but my dad once worked as a groundskeeper at a primary school. Worst thing he ever saw was a guy dropping his daughter off to school and before she went through the gate her dad went through her school bag and took out all of her packed food and left eating it, essentially leaving her with nothing to eat that day. Dad was so angry he said he wanted to knock the guy out right then and therefore leaving his child with no food for the day, but he ended up going straight to the principal to tell them what he witnessed so it could be investigated properly and get the kid help. Blamed me for their child's suicide attempt. Their kid wasn't even coming to my class. And the suicide attempt was apparently not bad enough to hospitalize her or get her the help she needed. The parent confronted me with this in the fall. By the spring we had a meeting with us, the kid, and my administration. And the parent came around to the fact that their child was essentially gaslighting them and using me as a scapegoat. But blaming someone who had spent maybe 5 hours with their child in a group setting for a suicide attempt was really low. Not a parent. But we had a babysitter who would roll up about 2 feet from the curb in her ancient dented to gold van. Have a preteen in the back slide the door open. And then scream get in. At the tiny 5-year-old she was picking up, the poor girl started crying every time. The Test A team. My mom is a middle school teacher. Just about every day. Some shitty parent doesn't come pick up their kids because they literally forgot about them or were passed out drunk on drugs. Then the poor child gets sent to daycare, which is not free. Then the shitty parents complain about the charge. My mom has had to bring random kids home before who barely know the way home. It's really sad. When I taught in Lower West Virginia, a mom showed up to a 5th grade sports event methed out. Wish I could have said this was atypical. I had a kid whose aunt was his legal guardian. I told her that he was acting up in class and not doing work. So she threatened to put him back into foster care if he didn't pull his shit together. Parent witness to an event, not a teacher. My kid's very first day of school, she's 4, 1/2. In the gym hall, all the kids and parents are in lines according to class, and one by one the teachers come and take them away. Our group was last to go. As we are waiting, a guy storms in clearly drunk, starts shouting at a woman in the line, "Why the duck didn't you tell me it was now? I've been looking everywhere, etc." He slapped the mum. Another dad in the line pulls drunk dad away and pushes him. He falls down on top of another kid. That kid's mum screams. Drunk starts to run out. Squished kid's dad chases him. He made it out of the gym but then got caught and the shitty kicked out at him in the school reception. Everyone is freaked out. Kids are crying, then the very happy teacher who is completely unaware comes in. A male parent came in and explained how his son was a mistake. His explanation was that he was just young, dumb and full of cum. When I taught English in China, my good friend and colleague started sleeping with one of the mothers. A woman 15 years his senior and married. I taught her daughter and would often hear stories about how they snuck around behind the husband's back. When I was a sub, I had to sub a 4th grade class for 2 weeks. The kids had to write a story about their family and read them to the class. The smartest girl in the class wrote about the dog her dad gave her. Except every time she mentioned the word dad, she said my dad. Sorry, I mean the sperm donor. I asked the office about it. Not a teacher anymore, but an RN. Kid wakes up from dental surgery. A 4-year-old who needed a root canal. Several extractions and fillings. Horrible dentition. Mom dad nowhere to be found post-op. Eventually wander into recovery and from parking lot. Reeking of cigarettes and weed. Proceed to give the 4-year-old a baby bottle of Mountain Dew. The pediatric dentist took the parents aside into a consult room and yelled, lectures them. They told him to mind his own ducking business. Scooped up the kid and walked out. Saddest part was I remember the poor kiddo had filthy feet and hair. Also reeked of cigarettes. He looked so defeated already. All I could think was that this kid has an uphill battle for a decent life. Being an RN is heartbreaking. Not always for the reasons you'd expect. I work in a middle school with an elementary school next door. 2 girls from my school were arguing all day and told their parents about it when they got out of school. The parents proceeded to call their families up to the elementary school and fought in front of a bunch of kindergartners. Knives and everything. Cops were called. I think some of the parents are still in jail for gun possession parole violations. One of the kids was pulled from our school and put in foster care. The parents proceeded to call their families up to the elementary school and fought in front of a bunch of kindergartners. Knives and everything. This sounds like a scene straight out of Family Guy. Not a teacher. But there were 2 students who got into a fight. So they were sitting in the office and called the parents. The parents proceed to show up and they got into a fight too. Who would have guessed? Plot twist. Kids were fighting about whose dad would beat the crap out of the others. Not really do. But once while waiting for parents to arrive to a parents' evening conference, my colleague pointed out one of my students' father sitting in the waiting area. He said, "You see the woman sitting next to him? Well, that's his wife. And the woman sitting on the other side of him? Well, that's her sister. And also his other wife. And his wife's brother sitting next to them? Also his wife. Her father? Wife. Her great grandmother. Believe it or not. Wife. This isn't even trashy, all this stuff is just sad and abusive. My wife is a special education teacher at a school that is about a 50/50 mix between lower middle class and extreme poverty stricken elementary student. One of her co-workers had a behavioral student that kept lashing out and having the cops called on them. His mother was never home as she was well known to be both addicted to meth and willing to sell herself to pay for said drugs. The last week of school this year he started a bunch of fights and the principal decided to just suspend him for the last 3 days of school. Principal called the mom, who was out of state and left their 8-year-old home alone, that the kid was suspended for the rest of the year. The mom responds over speaker that the school is run by racist ass white bitches and that she's gonna come over there and kick all your all white bitches asses. And just kept screaming that over and over. Mom is white. Kid is white. The principal hung up. CPS was called. Used to work with teenagers who had behavior problems in a special school. One day, a student of mine had a disorganization. He started punching staff and students alike while screaming. It took 5 male teachers to hold him down. The headmaster called his mom so she could pick him up. She had 10 minutes. If longer, we would call the cops. The mother arrived 8 minutes later. A woman in her late 40s with bleach blonde hair wearing a mini skirt and a crop top. She came in yelling and swearing at her son. She picked him up and smacked him at the back of the head while telling him he was a good for nothing idiot. The apple does not fall far from the tree. Edit. What I meant by the apple does not fall far from the tree is that I understood from then on why this kid was violent and angry all the time. Often, the parent's behavior is reproduced by the child. Sitting in a parent-teacher conference with several teachers and at least one administrator present. The mom plucks a hair from her head and starts flossing her teeth with said hair. My wife is a teacher and had a parent show up to conferences with a joint behind his ear. Probably showed up late cause he couldn't find his joint. I'm a male elementary teacher. I've had some sketchier parents make weird comments to me. Small rural area and there are some poverty, drug problems, and I can feel some single mothers staring at me because I have a decent job, undressing your credit rating with their eyes. This thread really made me realize I was surrounded by pieces of shit for a long time. A mother and her daughter showed up for kindergarten registration wearing matching booty shorts with Bootylicious written across the ass. The little girl was pulled from recess a few days into the school year and her mom was called in for a conference because she was teaching the other girls how to pole dance on the playground jungle gym. The mom was like, yeah, what's wrong with that? She's got skills. Practice now and get real paid later. CPS took her away from that lovely mom about 2 months later when she brought a bag of meth in and tried to sell it to a classmate. During a parent-teacher conference, the mom showed up late with a tiny dog inside her shirt, with his little head sticking out between her boobs. When we sat down, she took him out and he walked all over the table we were sitting at during the conference. Once had a crackhead mum with the word bitch tattooed on her neck. I, female, was co-coaching basketball with a newly divorced dad who came to every game with his girlfriend in 2008. She was an overbearing bitch. Long story, turns out that youth coach was having an affair with this bitch from where they both work, and that co-coach had told his wife and 3 kids, one of which was on the team, on Christmas Eve that he was leaving for this other woman. IDK what happened. But they broke up some time later. Some time after that, the football coach got a parent pregnant. You guessed it. Same bitch. After the baby was born, he took another job. I haven't seen him since. Interestingly, the mom's daughter ended up being something like a nationally qualified runner. I'm thinking run faster. This sounds really juicy but I think I'm gonna need a diagram. IDK if this counts, but back in elementary school my friends and I made a pretty successful business making survival bracelets. Since we were the only ones making them we had a monopoly and sold them for $5 and customs $8. The PTO, parent-teacher organization, who are in charge of festivals and organization of other things outside of education. They found out and saw money pit. They basically told us we couldn't sell them anymore unless we gave all the profits to the PTO. By the end we probably made around $500 until we were forced to stop. We even tried doing them through a black market for selling them and keeping the profits. Then the PTO found out and we got suspended. And finally decided to stop. Not a teacher. But my mom is. She teaches the visually impaired. There are these two students of hers whose parents, mainly the mom, tell them that they can't do anything. And won't be able to do anything. And all they do while at home is sit around because their mom makes them. However, my mom has been teaching them for about 4 years. Trying to get them to believe in themselves. It mostly has worked. But recently, a different teacher told them that they can't do anything as well. So that has been a huge setback for them. I just think that it's really trashy for a parent to tell their kids that they can't do anything even though they can do many things that other people can. Last year I taught 5th grade. I had a student for one block a day that was a little mentally unstable. She developed a crush on another girl and began writing her a ton of creepy notes. The school was handling it, but apparently the second girl's mother didn't think that was enough, so they drove to the first girl's bus stop in the morning and started yelling and threatening her. They basically had her cornered when the bus driver showed up and had to pry this raging mom away from the student. I used to work in a daycare. And on my first day in a new room with 15-24 month olds, I picked up a little boy and noticed he had dropped something through the neck hole in his onishi. I pulled it out and it was a lighter. When we returned it to the mom and told her where we found it, she laughed and said this kid gets his hands on everything. Poor kid also sounded like a smoker every time he laughed or coughed. When in court for sexually abusing his special needs nephew, the uncle who had custody said, "It was just the tip. He'll probably get more that the tip should his cellmates find out. 2 wrongs don't make a right." But I am not going to deny that I'll like him having his own words shoved down his throat.